Creating conversions through omnichannel conversations. This is a presentation given at the Future of Digital Marketing Conference in November 2022. So if we start and think about it, which channels do customers prefer? Do they prefer to shop with you online, or do they prefer your on-premise options? Well, the simple reality is, whichever of the two you may think, customers overwhelmingly prefer a blend of both physical and digital channels, according to recent research by the CMO Council, which I'll share in the link below. One thing is clear, consumers are looking for choice. They're looking to engage with us via the channels that they prefer at the time and place that they prefer. And if we're unable to provide that to them, they'll look for alternative options. For many of us, these questions are hard to answer. If we can't understand our customers' preferred channels, how much money are we spending pushing information out via channels that our customers don't pay attention to? What is it about their interactions with our brand that frustrate our customers today? And how can we better meet and engage with customers in the way that they expect? Way back in 1999, the Clue Train Manifesto was published in response to the uptake of the internet and fundamentally suggested that the internet was going to change business by giving more power to consumers. As consumers have been given access to more information and via more channels, so it is becoming more difficult for brands to engage in conversation. So we're not talking about one way pushing information out to customers, but rather how do we interact with customers via multiple channels as they try to attempt to communicate with us, ask us questions, buy from us, get service from us, and so on. We need to engage with them as part of the conversation via the multiple channels in order to enter the conversation rather than attempt to control the message. Why is omnichannel important? Well, the simple reality is that most customers choose to operate via multiple channels. 91% of businesses have a higher customer retention rate if they successfully implement omni-channel strategies. And quite honestly, customers become irritated by having to repeat themselves via multiple touch points. So how do we integrate our touch points together to allow customers to work across these different devices and different channels in an integrated fashion and getting an integrated superior response? Research shows us that the most commonly used channels remain email and telephone, while website and in-person still remain very high channels of choice for the bulk of consumers. Having said that, if one starts looking at younger demographics, then your social channels start to become more important as well. So this is not an exhaustive list here. But it's the stuff that one might expect. Email, telephone, in-person, the website. These are the primary channels that one has to integrate and communicate on in order to enter into the conversation with customers at the time and place that they choose. Many businesses are implementing multi-channel strategies, but legacy environments and costs and other factors mean that in many cases this is being done in an ad hoc and add-on fashion. So for example, we might have a point of sale system in our store where a customer can interact, make decisions, ask questions, get pricing, etc. We may have a separate implementation for our web channel, another implementation for our mobile channel, and so on. And this disjointed engagement causes 73% of consumers to consider moving on to another brand. Whereas with a true omnichannel experience, the consumer gets the same information and can share a conversation across different channels. So I can begin a conversation in the store, move on to the web, move on to a telephone call to talk to an operator, and that tracer or tracking of my conversation, the history of my conversation will be available, accessible. The operator will be able to understand what transactions I performed, what I previously asked, where I was going, where I got stuck. And can pick up and solve my problem for me much more quickly without repetition. A lot of this is the challenges come down to a data integrity problem. And by data integrity, we mean data that is of poor quality or has poor business context. So in a situation where customers interact through multiple touch points, they might be going online, through the retail environment, through the service desk, through the website, etc. In many cases, these environments are serviced at the back end by different systems, which means ultimately different databases. And that means that data is captured in different formats, different environments. It's recaptured in different ways, which leads to potential risk, increases the risk of errors, in inconsistencies across data sets, and it creates its own set of differences and problems, which in turn feeds into the broader business problem of making it really difficult to understand a consistent and accurate single view that can be reused for operational purposes and for analytics. And for example, when we're coming down to papaya compliance and other regulatory situations, the inability to understand the customer accurately can cause problems with our legal compliance. And this lack of understanding of the customer means that we may not, for example, understand whether the customer is a properly valuable customer or somebody that we don't really care about from a value perspective. It becomes really difficult to create opportunities for upselling or cross-selling when we don't have an accurate picture of the customer and we don't understand who that customer is and how they interact with us. What we've seen, particularly post-COVID, is that more and more businesses are investing in digital channels as alternatives to the in-person touch points that consumers were no longer using during lockdown. But consumers have also become more confident in the use of and the convenience of digital channels. So there's a lot of focus on creating these digital channels, but those siloed communications that are happening across channels are preventing seamless customer experiences. Only 37% of businesses have a data architecture that enables high quality, data-driven, personalized customer experiences. And in fact, a minority take an exceptionally long time, 4 to 7 days, to make changes, consistent changes to customer communications across channels. So what we're seeing is that data is underlying the drive to omnichannel, and it's also underlying a lot of the challenges that are being seen in omnichannel. So by addressing the data integrity issues and by dealing with the data, we can improve the customer experience, increase personalization, and drive adoption and consumption. So as an example, some years back now, we built a single customer view across data silos for a banking group. And really what this was looking at, this was back in 2012, was how do we bring in more than just the customer information? It's fairly common to look at a single view of the customer as a way to identify a duplicate customer across different sources. But what we wanted to understand and what the bank wanted to understand is what channels does the customer interact with us? What are their products? What products do they have, and are they potentially could they have opportunities for cross-selling and upselling? What's their risk profile? How do they transact with us? Via what channels do they interact? And in this particular case, as the bank had grown and added in additional channels and additional product options, so it had brought a new system. So surrounding the core banking application, there was an e-business application, a mobile banking application, a home loans application, a credit card application, and so on and so on. Each of these built with their own data silo, replicating certain data with their own data quality issues and what have you. So we built up this view that allowed them to, for example, identify the best telephone number to use for a campaign, which increased the accuracy of the outbound campaigns, that allowed them to start to capture the data that they needed to segment their customers more accurately and start to identify opportunities for upselling and cross-selling and so on. One of the huge benefits that we found was the ability to enrich the central data record by consolidating data across multiple data system or customer-facing systems. For example, in one system we might have an email address that didn't exist in the core banking application. In another, we might have a more accurate cell phone number, and so on. So what we found was that there's a lot of value to be found by consolidating different data sets to improve the quality of the overall customer record that we had for this particular environment. So a little bit about us. For about 20 years, we have been focused on business-first enterprise information management, by which I mean solving business problems using data. And finally, I'd like to leave you with this. We all know that if you want loyalty, you have to get a dog. If you want customer loyalty, you have to sort out your customer data quality.